در کرو اس سکینہ اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا
Assalamu alaikum. The Mahdi Youth Society is in need of your help through donations. Please check out cig.ca and click on Donate Now. Upon clicking Donate Now, scroll down and click on CanadaHelps.org. Through this, you can address your funding to the Mahdi Youth Society by referring to AMYS. Enter your donation amount and click Submit so that your donations can go a long way in helping us continue to broadcast our programs for Muharram and for future events. Thank you for your time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں 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 لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی میں شاہ پہ ہوا ساتویں سے پانی بند اسی میں شاہ پہ ہوا ساتویں سے پانی بند رہا فرات پہ پہرا اسی محرم میں رہا فرات پہ پہرا اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں حسین پیاسے کا بازو اسی میں ہے ٹوٹا حسین پیاسے کا بازو اسی میں ہے ٹوٹا شہید ہو گیا سقا اسی محرم میں شہید ہو گیا سقا اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی میں قتل ہوا نوجوان علی اکبر اسی میں قتل ہوا نوجوان علی اکبر بہا ہے خون تمنا اسی محرم میں بہا ہے خون تمنا اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی مہینے میں مسند جلی پیمبر کی اسی مہینے میں مسند جلی پیمبر کی پیدر کرو سکینہ اسی محرم میں پیدر کرو سکینہ اسی محرم میں لٹا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں کھلتا ہے گلشن زہرا اسی محرم میں.
جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. آل عمران کہاں اور زندان کہاں یہ بہن قید ہوئی تو نہ آیا غازی. جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی تو نہ آیا غازی. ہم کو پانی نہ ملے تیری خوشبو تو رہے تیرے بازو نہ کٹے چاہے مشکیزہ چھدے یہ مگر ہو نہ سکا تیرے بازو ہے جدا مجھ پہ ہے تشنہ لبی تو نہ آیا غازی. جب ردا سر سے چھنی میں صدا دیتی رہی. دھوپ میں تو تھا شجر تجھ سے آباد تھا گھر ہے برہنا میرا سر کیا نہیں تجھ کو خبر اے علمدار وفا اس بہن کو پا خدا تجھ سے ڈھارس تھی بڑی تو نہ آیا.
على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله. هيا على الصلاة. هيا على الصلاة. هيا على الفلاح. هيا على الفلاح. هيا على خير الأمل. هيا على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
Assalamu alaikum. The Mahdi Youth Society is in need of your help through donations. Please check out CIG.ca and click on Donate Now. Upon clicking Donate Now, scroll down and click on CanadaHelps.org. Through this, you can address your funding to the Mahdi Youth Society by referring to AMYS. Enter your donation amount and click Submit so that your donations can go a long way in helping us continue to broadcast our programs for Muharram and for future events. Thank you for your time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hai Sakina, 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 meri aao ke Sakina ko manao.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها، اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك واستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك. ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقادت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد أملي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك؟ أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اعتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أهترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا، مستغفرا منيبا، مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات، أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تعبد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعا، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثور، يسير بقاء، قصير مدة. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك. أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك، فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأذجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين. يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين، أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وضاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج معمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يعمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربه؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجلى ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه رمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته إن عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئاتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي وكنت أنت الرق والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدام وأعمالي عندك مقبولة حتى أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي يا سيدي يا من عليه مؤولي إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قو على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أصرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في البارزين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرده ومن كادني فكده واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجدني بجودك وأطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم ويا دافع النقم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم، إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم، تنزيل العزيز الرحيم، لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون، لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقام فهم مقمحون، وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم، وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون، إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين، اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت تعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منتا فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار فكل في فلك يسبحون آية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى لنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنكم لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلا تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنا يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يحيي إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله
وآل محمد.
Hay Zainab, hay hay Bazar, hay Zainab, hay hay Bazar. चादर न कफन है दूर वतन, चादर ले तब है हाथों मेरा सन। ओ पास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। ओ पास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। रास्ता बना रही है बिनते अली का फिजा, कांटे होता होता के। ओ पास की बहन को शामी रुला, चादर दिखा दिखा के। ओ बास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर। परदेस में किसी पर ऐसा ना वक्त आए, ना महरमों में कोई करते हैं ये दुआएं। अहले हरम के बच्चे झोली उठा उठा के, अब्बास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। अब्बास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। भाई बहन की आंखें नम होती जा रही हैं, बिनते अली की सांसें कम होती जा रही हैं। खंजर चला रहा है ज़ैनब के दिल पे जालिम, खंजर दिखा दिखा के। अब्बास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। हाय एक बच्ची कह रही है, आओ मदद को बाबा, दादी की तरह मेरी अब हो गई ज़ईफ़ा। ज़ख्मी किया है पहलू कैसे ज़ालिमों ने मुझको गिरा गिरा के। अब्बास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। अब्बास की बहन को रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। पर्दे में भी जो बीबी चलती थी ना ज़यादा, परदेस में अबन पर आया है वक्त कैसा। लाए हैं शाम वाले उन शहजादियों को, पैदल चला चला के। अब्बास की बहन को शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा दिखा के। उनको शामी रुला रहे हैं, चादर दिखा के। वो शामियों के ताने, वो मुस्कुराते चेहरे, बेपर्दा साथ अपने बिनते सजाद कैसे भूले, उस भीड़ से गुजरना नजरें छुका छुका के। عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے ہیں چادر دکھا دکھا کے ہائے جاتے ہیں جس طرف بھی اہل حرم کھلے سر کھاتی ہے پہلے تھرا کھاتی ہے پہلے پتھر اپنے لہو میں تر ہیں زہرا کی بیٹیوں کو فضا بچا بچا کے عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے ہیں چادر دکھا دکھا کے عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے ہیں چادر دکھا دکھا کے زخموں کی وہ تکلم تعداد جانتے ہیں مہدی کو بھی خبر ہے سجاد جانتے ہیں مارے ہیں کس نے کتنے حیدر کی لاڈلی کو پتھر اٹھا اٹھا کے عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے ہیں چادر دکھا دکھا کے عباس کی بہن کو شامی رلا رہے ہیں چادر دکھا دکھا کے
Salam. So just before we start, a few announcements. We're holding a Kahoot trivia challenges for ages 15 and under and ages 16 to 25. The last date for the challenge is September 13th, and also until the 30th of Muharram, Maulana Syed Asad Jafri will be giving lectures each day at the Mehdi Youth Society channel. The programs will begin at 8 p.m. starting with. Be sure to follow us on our social media, Mehdi Youth Society on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook as well. We also it requires a lot of funds, and we'd like for you to donate at treasure@cig.ca. Now we're going to just show you a quick short video on how you can also donate online. If we can go ahead and show that video roll.
Assalamu alaikum. The Mehdi Youth Society is in need of help through donations. Please check out cig.ca and click on Donate Now. Upon clicking Donate Now, scroll down and click on canadahelps.org. Through this, you can address your funding to the Mehdi Youth Society by referring to AMYS. Enter your donation amount and click Submit so that your donations can go a long way in helping us continue to broadcast our programs for Muharram and for future events. Thank you for your time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, thank you for watching that video. Also, as well as the AMYS link, you can also use the Muharram Fund. So if you donate towards the General Fund or Muharram Fund for CIG, that will greatly help us as well. Please also remember to like and subscribe our YouTube channel, and also hit the bell notification to get notified when our next video goes live. Also, along with that, I'd like to now call up Maulana Syed Jafri to start his speech, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله وعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنني أنا الله لا إله إلا أنا فاعبدوني وأقم الصلاة لذكري صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. We continue to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing of these days of Azah, the days of Muharram and Safar. As has been announced, inshallah, I am with all of you every night for the last 10 nights of the month of Muharram, which are typically known as the days of Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam. And in this Ashraya Sajjadiyya, I'd like to first of all spend a few minutes in introducing the topic that has been advertised on the flyer. What exactly is the reasoning behind this topic? And 10 nights all of you are with me. When we think about Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam, naturally, of course, besides his role in Karbala, we think about his two beautiful laqabs of Zain al-Abidin and Al-Sajjad. And both of them point to a very specific type and a specific beauty in his worship. For example, Zain al-Abidin is the one who is the zinat, the beauty of all the worshippers. And of course, Sajjad, which naturally points to the idea of prostration, but in a sigha mubaligha type, which is a continuous form of prostration, one is known as Sajjad. So Sajid is a person who does sajda once. Sajjad is the one who continuously does sujood or prostrates in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, given the fact that we are, of course, here to remember his shahadat, and in a matter of days now, we'll commemorate his shahadat and close out the month of Muharram and then, wait for the arrival of the month of Safar, I thought that it would be appropriate for us to examine our own worship. And as all of you know, the base and the bunyad and the building of our worship is our salat and our prayers. And so, looking at some of the spiritual dimensions of salat will be our topic from now until the end of this ashra. This will not be a discussion on fiqh or ahkam. We won't be talking about the 7 parts of the body that one has to place on the ground during sujood, or talk about, for example, the rukn and ghair rukn of salat, and the 11 pillars of salat, and the dhikr in sujood or the surahs in qiyam. No, this is not about, why do we do a sajda on turba or why do we pray with our hands open? None of that. This is a little bit of a deeper look into salat. And the base of my discussion will be from Imam Khomeini's book, Rahmatullah Alayh, of Adab al-Salat, the etiquettes of salat, a very well-known book that I know a lot of you listening to me have studied it or have attempted to read it. It's not an easy book at all to read on your own. You do require a little bit of a Hausa background, or at least a teacher nonetheless. Book in the next 10 nights. And if you can, what would be beneficial for all of us is that if you can follow along with, it should be available online in English. And I will quote you exactly where I'm going in terms of the discussion. Now, in that book itself, a little bit of the book, a history of the book. This is not the first book that Imam Khomeini wrote on salat. His initial book was Israr al-Salat, the secrets of salat, which was at a very, very high level, meant for a Hausa audience. And the awam and the general public now said that, Agha, we need something for us every day, individuals who are not in the Hausa. And so to satisfy that need and that thirst, he wrote Adab al-Salat, the etiquettes of salat. And in there, before he even touches on any of the arkan and the pillars of salat, being qiyam or ruku or sujood, he goes through an extensive discussion on simply the preliminaries and the muqaddamat of salat. Everything from situations like tafhim and huzur qalb and shaitan and bahajat and all these different principles that we will discuss in detail to the best of our ability in the next 10 nights and really delve deep into it. Because the reality is that we have a hadith, for example, the very famous hadith from Sheikh Suduq's collection of Man La Yahduruhu Faqih, where he says that the very first thing that every servant will be asked on the Day of Judgment is about their salat. If that salat is accepted, everything else is accepted. If the salat is rejected, everything else will be rejected. So it deserves our attention. It does require us to sit there and say something isn't right in our salat, at least in mine. When we look at the way the Quran speaks about salat in general, and today what I will try to achieve in the next 10 nights, and really my thesis statement of this ashra is that we have to break free of the sahat of the salat and look into the batin of the salat and the haqiqat of the salat. What I mean by sahat is the outward form of it, the look of it. For example I give sometimes is that for my uni or high school students right now in the audience, says that at the end of the term your research paper is due. Okay. I remember 1 year in my high school years, the topic I was given was comparing the revolution of Mahatma Gandhi with Dr. King. Okay, that was my research paper. And they gave us pretty much the entire semester to do a thorough research of it and present the paper. Now, along with what they're actually looking to achieve in terms of content, they would give us some of their requirements. For example, single spaced, double spaced, right? Page numbers, where they want the page numbers, bottom, center. I don't know how it is now. We're talking about when I was in high school in the 1800s. A certain size, how to cite your references, et cetera, right? A table of contents, everything, right? That's also part of the package of the research paper, but the actual asl is the content, correct? Now I want you to imagine that my focus is to make sure that I have my Times New Roman font, I have my size 12 font, I have my page numbers perfectly placed in the right spot, everything is cited perfectly, table contents, title page, bind it properly, beautiful package, but the content inside is weak. My entire focus was to make sure that everything was looked proper, but the content inside was missing something. Salat is no different. There is an outer, inshallah tomorrow when we begin this discussion, there's an outer form of salat, the ahkam, the fiqh of salat, no doubt. Finding qibla, for example, the muqaddamah of salat, wudu, for example, those 5 things that break your salat, whether or not you do them intentionally or leave them out, unintentionally, whatever the case may be. Those are all different things. I feel like people like me, and maybe some of you, are really focusing our entire career in salat on the sahat and the spacing of salat and not so much the content of the salat. Because the reality is that we've been praying all our life. And the way the Quran refers to how what the salat should do to us, it's not happening. Surah Ankabut, for example, in a very famous verse, Inna salata, right, tanaha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. This salat should repel you from fahsha and from munkar, right? From from evil and from these despicable acts, from indecency, right? So you should be somebody who's repelled by indecency and by evil simply by the avenue of this salat. But the reality is that I may be one person. I know people who have been praying our whole lives, but we end up being indecent. We end up being evil. There's a disconnect here somewhere. All this talk about mi'raj, ascension towards the heavens of salat, all of that seems like it's for the urafa, the awliya, the anbiya, the a'immah, not for everyday individuals. But the reality is that it is for everyday individuals. So we have to look a little bit deeper into this topic. Now, a couple of things in the beginning I want to establish. Number one is the base of the Quranic verse that I use as the base of our discussion, and there's a lot of verses on salat, is from Surah Taha, verse number 14. Surah Taha is that surah where a lot of Nabi Musa alayhi salam's story is told. And this also verse is part of Nabi Musa's story. And I'll tell you why I chose this verse of all the various verses there are. And there are, like I said, so many that speak about Salat, Salat, Salat. This is that moment in the story of Nabi Musa. He's on his way back to Egypt after getting married to Nabi Shuaib's daughter Midian. And on his journey, of course, they stop over and, they run into, a difficulty in terms of the weather. They're cold, they're hungry. In the distance, he sees a fire, Nabi Musa. He thought, you know what, let me grab a coal or at least some fire from there, enough so I can build a fire for my family. And that's where he speaks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the first time. That's when he's given the prophethood. As he approaches now what's referred to as the side of this mountain, or the burning bush as some books call it, he hears a voice saying that I am Allah, remove your slippers, this is the Muqaddas, this is the pure valley of Tuwa, I have chosen you, I am your Lord. And then he says, verse number 14, Innani an Allahu, I am surely Allah. La ilaha illa ana, there's no God but me. Fa'abuduni, so worship me. Wa aqimu salata li dhikri, and establish the prayer for my remembrance. The first thing he does, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the first avenue that he introduces the ibadat of him is through salat. And not the prayer of it, the establishment of salat. Okay? The establishment of salat has to be both an internal and an external discussion. And so, it's important that we understand that in this era where it seems that there is an attack on organized religion, that we reinforce the idea of salat. A lot of our youth, me growing up, we saw salat, namaz as a check mark on my checklist. We didn't see it as 5 times a day of a possible ascension towards God. For that 10 minutes now, I could be free from this world and simply focus on my Creator 5 times a day. Right. Another point that I want to make is a lot of you might be asking that, these are the days ago. Imam Hussein went out to unveil the mask of the tyrant and the oppressor of the time. And here we are in Muharram talking about Salat when, the UAE and Israel struck a deal. These Charlie Hebdo cartoons are going on, right? Elections in the US, for example, anti-racism all over the world, right? The genocide in Yemen, for example, the continued difficulty of Palestinians right now, Syrians, Iraqis, Kashmiris, right? Afghanistan's, our Muslims in China, for example, like everything now. There's so much happening right now. And that's about you're talking about namaz. And the reality is that the Quran talks about something called a furqan, okay? And says that the one who has taqwa, وَإِن تَتَّقُمُ اللَّهُ يَجْعَلُهُ فُرْقَانًا, that when you have piety and you are God conscious and God centric in your life, then Allah says, we will gift you, place inside of you a furqan between right and wrong. Part of us understanding the zalim and the zulm, the oppressor and the oppression of today, is for us to build our God-centric nature. They're not independent of each other. Anybody who has a good grip and who zaman shanas, who knows the era that they live in, are individuals who are very in tune with the haqq of Allah, meaning the ibadat of Allah. It's His every right now that we worship Him 5 times a day. Without that aspect of our existence, nothing of what's happening right now, who simply are Muslims by name, I'm sorry, and they have no clue, or they are completely heedless to what's happening right now around the world. So yes, while I understand the political nature and the turmoil right now happening all over the world, specifically in the Muslim world, part and parcel of us identifying between right and wrong, haqq and batil, is to what? Is to increase our God-centric life. We can't do that without salat. Salat is the base of everything. The third point is the reason why I brought this topic up in this ashra It's because right now, and this is just across the board of all major Abrahamic religions, there seems to be an attack, not an attack, there seems to be a rebellion against organized religion. I oftentimes tell this story that last year I was in Calgary during these Ayam Azah. They had an interfaith Husain Day, a beautiful program, religion and different faiths. And I had the chance to sit down with a young priest in the local Calgary area. Young guy, very dynamic speaker. I mean, he compared, Nabi Isa alayhi salam to Imam Hussein beautifully. And afterwards, I approached him to kind of, let him know that I was very touched by your lecture. And he asked me about, Toronto and the center, et cetera, et cetera. And so he asked me a very important question. He said, do young guys come to your center? And alhamdulillah, as much as I would like to see more young guys come to our center, alhamdulillah, we have a core that is there. Of course, there's always room for improvement. But I said, on typical Thursday night, yes. I mean, we have a handful here and there. So he said, not one young individual comes to my church. And all of our meetings, all of our board of directors meetings are all consumed with how do we attract young people. So one of the ways is that maybe, because of my age, he was in his late 30s, I think. His young age, his lingo, his look, his accent, whatever the case may be, they might attract. And I spoke to a bigger issue that the synagogue, the church, and the masjids are facing now for the past recent years, of the fact that there is this movement now away from organized religion. That they believe, the youth of today believe, not just youth, maybe individuals as well, that spirituality is an internal reality between me and God. It's inside of my heart. Does it need to have an external form to it? Right? So, while you're defining how to pray to God, I have my own whispering inside of my heart, my meditation inside of my heart, where that's equally a prayer to me. I don't need to sit there and, conform to a certain specific way to pray to God. Prayer is a very, very internal, personal form of worship and should be established by the worshiper. Okay. And so they see the synagogue, the church, and the mosque as the four walls of organized religion. Thus, they don't feel the need to enter those buildings because, it's me in the actual physical building. I can do it in the comfort of my home. Now, on top of that, you add the pandemic of the past 5-6 months, where now our places of worship have been closed, relatively speaking. And now, of course, that expands the issue altogether. Now this virtual world, a buffet of knowledge coming in from every corner of the globe, go from this YouTube channel to that YouTube channel. Everything is uploaded, everything is playlisted, everything is live now. Now you're sitting in the comfort of your home in your pajamas now listening to me right now. This is great. No commute, no parking, right? Not dealing with people who are judging me. No comments from auntie about why aren't I pregnant yet? All these things are there. So it's beautiful. I can sit there, I can close my TV, go upstairs and fall asleep within 5 minutes. I don't need the building, right? And, I have said this throughout my time in the past 20 nights of Muharram. Specifically, I made a point to wherever I spoke, I made a point to say, this is not the way it should be. Imam Hussein should not be grieved like this. It's a communal grief. Muharram is a communal reality. One of the beautiful blessings of Muharram is that it brings the entire community together. You see people that you haven't seen all year during the days of Ayam Azah. Okay, and as an individual who is now who has spoken in an empty masjid, believe me, it's a challenge. It's not easy, and many of you now have sent me messages that look, as much as they were watching you on TV, a screen in our living room just wasn't the same. My point is that they see Salaat as the representation of organized religion. And thus, I don't need to, force myself or conform to that specific form of prayer. I can meditate, I can close my eyes and do yoga. I can meditate. I can sit there and just kind of have my internal thoughts, have my quiet time, let's say, before I go to bed. That's equally as much as a prayer is as, let's say, namaz al-zuhr is. And that's a problem right now. Because what we don't realize is that it's not up to the worshiper to dictate to the worshipped how to worship him. The worshipped now tells the worshiper how to worship him. When shaitan now is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Bahar now, hadith is there, that Allah removed this idea of Adam from me. Don't ask me to bow down to Adam. I will worship you like nobody else will. And Allah responds to him saying, you don't tell me how to worship me. I'm the ma'bud, you're the abd. I'm the worshipped, you're the worshipper. Right? You have love for me to worship. Of love has to be upheld by you. It's like you telling your spouse, for example, that look, I love you. You know I love you, but I'm going to love you the way I want to love you. Meanwhile, she's telling you, look, I want 1, 2, 3 for you to do, and you're like, okay, that's great, but I will tell you. Wait a second, she's the beloved, right? You're the one who's in love with her. You're the one that is in love with him. He dictates to you, this is what I want from you if you love me. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is no different. The language of love is extremely important. It's his haqq and his right to uphold that. And salat is Allah's language of love. Salat is Allah's language. We need to pray 4 rakats here, 3 rakats here, 2 rakats here. But I'm gonna be in my bed, under my pillows. I'm gonna have my moment, my Zen moment, and that should be enough for you, Or do you want? I don't need to sit there and go through a bowing, a prostration, tashahhud, salam, qunut, qiyam, ruku, alhamd. No, why? Right? And in the process, what we're doing is that we're downplaying the way that Allah wants to be worshipped. It's his right, it's his haqq. Okay. So all of these things are part and parcel. When we reduce salat to nothing but sahat, and the exoteric aspect of salat, the external aspect of salat, how far should I bend down, asabhai? Should my elbows be up, asabhai? Right? Should my fingers be like this in sujood or not? Right? Those kind of things. Can I recite qunut in any language, asabhai? Those are all the questions about salat. And that's no doubt one portion of it. But Times New Roman, single spacing, page numbering is very secondary. The primary is, were you able to get the proper content between Gandhi and Dr. King in your essay or not? And so it's important that now, we have to understand there is a disconnect here. Something is not happening. This salat 5 times a day should be resulting in us being better people. It's not. Our divorce rates are up. Our kids are on the verge of atheism. Our centers are fragmented. Right? And all of this should not be happening with a nation that prays the way it prays 5 times a day. Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. He says in a very famous tradition, but imagine that you lived beside a stream, a body of water. And 5 times a day, you wash your body, your physical body, in that stream. 5 times a day. Right? There are people who shower daily. Imagine showering 5 times a day. There wouldn't be a speck of dirt on you. He says that salat is that stream for the soul. 5 times a day, you wash your soul. The soul should be spotless. And yet there's black marks up and down our soul. So we're not getting it. Something isn't happening. It's not the translation. Something's being lost here. And again, it goes back to the idea that we haven't quite delved deep enough into salat. And Imam Khomeini in this book goes very deep into things. And my challenge would be not only to understand this, but to now deliver to all of you. So if you can follow along, that would be very beneficial. But it is important that we understand that salat, like everything else, has a batin as well, has an inner, esoteric dimension to it as well. Okay, and I want to present that to all of you tonight, and then we'll go through the very first preface of the book tomorrow, and then of course build on from there, inshallah. Now, the first thing that he says in the book, in his own introduction, not the translators, nothing, the author's preface, or preface, depending on, how you pronounce it, is this idea that everything has a zahir, everything has a batin. Everything has an outer, everything has an inner. Right? For example, us, we have an outer body and an inner soul. And we'll talk about the I-ness of us in a couple of nights, if not. Salat is no different. For us to reduce, now this is Imam Khomeini now saying this inside this book, if we when we reduce salat to be simply an outer form of worship, we've done ourselves a disservice, ourselves. Then he quotes a hadith by Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He says this, beautiful. Look at the way that the hadith now personifies salat. He says that when we uphold the rights of salat, meaning that we do our best to pray on time, we do our best to pray with the presence of the heart, we do our best to pray with all the sihat and the ahkam. That's also equally important. Now, let me, moving on with this example of the essay paper. Imagine now the content is amazing, but I gave them font size 16 instead of 12. I gave them Comic Sans, horrible font, instead of Times New Roman. I didn't number my pages. There was no table of contents, but the content was the best I've ever written. I won't get full marks, right? So I'm not downplaying the apparent version and the ahkam version of salat. No. That's also very important. How we present that salat to God is also very important. He says, Imam Sadiq, that when this salat now is respected in this world during our life, meaning its limits, its restrictions, its timings, its ahkam, its fiqh, that same salat will be raised by the angels pure and white. The salat will. The salat now takes on a form that's personified in the hereafter. And that salat will turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say to God that God, the same way that this individual respected me, upheld my rights, made me pure and white in this world, make him or her pure and white in this world as well. Respect him, respect her, uphold her dignity, elevate him or her, let's say, the same way they elevated me in this world. Who's salat's talking? That's salat talking. On the flip side, if we are someone like me is not, and the restrictions and the greatness of salat in this world, then the angels will do what? Will raise that salat as impure on the day of judgment, in the hereafter. And that salat now will turn to Allah and say, God, the same way that he disrespected me in this world by never getting up when it's time for salat, is the same way that I want you to disrespect him in this world as well. So that means that salat now is not just limited to this physical world. It will carry forward in the hereafter. In what state will it carry forward? That's the kamal of the one who's praying. Another hadith that he quotes in the opening of the book, Imam Khomeini, again from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he says that when we enter the grave, when the marhum and the mayt enters the grave, certain acts of worship that they did in this world come in a body form. Salat is one of them. Salat, zakat, for example, all these things. Salat to the right, good deeds hovering over him. And that just come and interrogate that mayyit is salat. If that salat is strong, it becomes an advocate for that mayyit. It becomes a witness for that mayyit. It becomes somebody who protects that mayyit against the interrogation of the angels. But if that salat is weak, it holds no value in the grave. We're grasping and drawing and reaching for anyone to come and speak on our behalf. It's that salat that we need to really have as our witness, as our guardian, as our, advocator in the hereafter. Which brings me to a very important point and a good segue for tomorrow's discussion. And that is this, that we ultimately have two choices when it comes to praying namaz, praying salat. The one choice is that we keep it at a formal form. Meaning we keep it at a physical form. And when we're worried simply about the exoteric meaning external, zahir, something that is apparent. And we're not too concerned about the inner dimensions of salat. In that same book, Imam Khomeini in Adab al-Salat talks about that if you want that salat to follow you in the hereafter, it has to be prayed such that it penetrates the physical body itself to the soul. Oh, such a profound, profound discussion. It's not just something that we're physically doing. Yes, like I said 1,000 times, the secondary process of salat is a sahat of it, is a physical form of it. It's how we present and making sure that we do wudu properly, and niyat is all there, making sure all of those various ahkam, fiqh rulings of salat is all taken care of. But that does not penetrate into the soul of the human being. Look, I'll give you a very simple example, okay? You have a piece of furniture inside of your house, okay? Let's say a dresser inside of your room, in your master bedroom, a dresser. And your child, or maybe you by mistake now, you make a mark on that dresser with permanent marker, with a Sharpie, okay? It's permanent now. You do your best to scrub it and wash it, not gonna happen. A big black kind of a line on your beautiful white dresser. It's there forever, unless you, of course, paint over it, but it's there forever. And now you move homes. Let's say you move 2 or 3 homes in your life, and wherever that dresser goes, that mark on that dresser goes with it. It's not like that mark stays in that home where the mark happened. It's not like when you move from that home, mark stays there and the dresser moves on. Of course not, right? The mark is on the dresser. Wherever the dresser goes, the mark goes with it. This is the dresser moving, okay? It's forever now attached to that dresser. Our salat has to be in this world such that it's personal. It can't be that it's just attached to our physical dimension, because once we bury that physical dimension, all our years of salat will also be buried with it. And while the soul with that perishing body in the grave. And while that soul over here is looking, where's my salat? Where's my salat? Hey, look, your salat was only physical in this world. It didn't get to the soul. You didn't mark the soul like you marked that dresser. Wherever that dresser went, the mark went with it. Wherever that soul is going in the hereafter, from the grave to barzakh to the day of judgment, that salat is going to go with it. And wherever it goes, it's going to advocate on your behalf. That yes, he prayed for me. Yes, he upheld my rights. He did his level best for that 5, 7, 8, 11 minutes of salat to close out everything. As difficult talk about these discussions moving forward, it's not easy. It's not pretend, and no one's telling you that's easy. But if you've been somebody who's been praying salat for the past 20, 30 years, let's get past the physical dimension of it. Let's get past the idea that, okay, let's keep my eyes to the side. Let's not move so much. Let's make sure that I'm focusing. Can I move my eyes around? All these things are secondary discussions. Where is the ascension? Where is the miraj? Where is that penetrating, making a mark on our soul? That's what we want. We want the salat to carry forward with us after the perishing body has been long buried inside the graveyard. That's the kamal. Okay, that's where the idea of anil fahsha'i wal munkar, removing the indecency, removing the evil from you. That's only when that salat begins to cleanse the soul. Well, it has to get to the soul first, right? To cleanse it. It can't be stuck on the body. And a lot of our discussions the next 10 nights and ibadat in general. But because salat is the bunyad and that litmus test of everything else that we do, it has to start with our salat. Now, one term that we will use a lot that Imam Khomeini really uses, and you'll find out if you have ever attempted to go down into this book, he's a beautiful. And the one thing that I absolutely love about this book is that this was a book written by Imam Khomeini. No ghostwriting here. This is not notes that were transcribed by one of his students. No, this is a book that was written by his very hands. Okay, a point that I make, whenever I talk about terms, suluk and salik. Okay, salik is the traveler. Suluk is the actual path. Okay. So he refers to us individuals on this journey as travelers. We ultimately are travelers, right? We're traveling on the path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we're going to travel way beyond this world into the next world and onto the day of judgment. And there are various paths of our journey, of course. So we'll use these terms a little bit, a little bit freely. Inshallah, you'll be able to pick up what exactly I'm talking about. And when you do come across those terms inside of the text, it'll make sense to you. Because the reality is that the salat will not be able to penetrate the physical body and get to the soul, the I inside of me. And I'll expand tomorrow. I get a lot of questions about, Asad Bhai in the Quran talks about the qalb and the ruh and the nafs and the aql. Are these four separate things? The exact same thing? What exactly is it? What's going on here? How do I determine? All he has in the book is that, there are two terms that we'll use also throughout, right? And I'll explain them right now. I have time. I have a little bit more time. Inshallah, after that, we will move towards Masayib. Opening discussion, as you guys know me by now, my ashras are designed this way. Opening night discussion, and then inshallah we will build, and we'll get to some sort of a climax, inshallah, near the ending of our ashra. He says what's important are two terms. Izzat al-Rububiyya, Dhillat al-Ubudiyya. Izzat al-Rububiyya. The power of the lordship of Allah, the greatness and the izzah of Allah being a Rabb, and the dhillat ubud, and the weakness or the lowliness of the servants, of the worshipper. Okay, these two have to exist together for there to be any chance of salat penetrating inside of our soul. Okay, it can't be that we don't understand the azamat of Allah being a Rabb, or how much dhalil we are as Allah being as us being Allah's abd. Okay, so first two discussions is making sure that we understand how to achieve these two. How can we make sure we understand what Rabb means, what Rububiyat means? Because when we understand what Rabb means, then that khud ba khud izzat happens by itself. And then when we understand how zalil we must be, how past we must be, how low we must be, right? We are in terms of us being a slave of Allah, then only then can we begin the journey towards Allah. That I-ness has to be understood. Has to be understood when we say qalb, ruh, nafs, aql. None of that will make sense unless we understand that I'm the abid, he's the ma'bud. I'm the worship. Both of us in this equation have to be understood properly. Sometimes, I'm saying people like me sometimes have it flipped. God forbid, we think that I'm doing God a favor by my worship. I am Azim, he is na'udhu billah, Dhalil. I'm the master, he is the slave. Imam Qadim alayhi salatu wasalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. He talks about ujb. Okay, not my topic. It's a good topic though. Ujb, self-conceit, narcissism as they call it today. The fact that we are in love with ourselves, right? He says there's levels to everything, right? The highest level of ujb, the highest level of self-love is this idea that we actually believe that I'm doing Allah a favor by worshiping him. Allah. I believe that I'm doing God a favor by worshiping him. Now, nobody apparently says that I'm praying salat for your sake, not for me. No, of course, we all attempt to sit there on the musalla and say, no, this is for Allah, Allah deserves my salat, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it trickles out. It travels from the deepest portion of our heart and comes out to we actually end up expressing it. We go through a height of tragedy, we lose a loved one unexpectedly. We thought that we would live forever with them. Unexpectedly now, car accident, an illness, whatever the case may be. And sometimes the things that comes out of our mouth, Allah, I worshipped you. Allah, every year I went to Karbala. Allah, I was involved here. I did this. I never missed one salat. Every day I fasted. My khums, my charity, my sadaqah, everything. I mean, where's all that? Meaning that, well, I did all this for you. Like I did this as a favor to you, so you could protect me from all this bala and hardship. And yes, I know it's emotional. Doesn't have sometimes, when that emotion subsides and we go back to our proper ways. But sometimes those deep rooted voices come out. We got to be very, very careful. right? Izzat-e rububiyat, dhillat-e ubudiyat. These two terms are extremely important, and I will take my time. I'll spend 2 nights explaining what these terms mean to get to the point that He is Aziz, we are Dhalil in the realm of Salat. In the realm of Salat. When that happens, then we begin to understand why someone like Imam Sajjad would begin to shake when he would do wudu, about to meet his Lord, about to meet his Aziz. When the Abd meets his Mawla, when the Zalil meets the Aziz, then naturally now, I'm like ever official, or someone who has an immense amount of respect, a very, very senior alim. I've heard so many stories of so many qafilas going from Toronto, going to meet Sayyid Sistani, may Allah give him a long life, in Iraq, in Najaf, and just the humbleness, the awe, sitting in front of a marja taqleed. Not knowing, not a single word coming out of their mouth, tears falling down their face. Right? That's the state sometimes that we have to get to as we enter our salat. The time approaches, the adhan goes off, our alarms go off, we hear the adhan, we're doing wudu, right? That's where we need to get to. And of course, it's uluk, right? It's a journey. I'm the salik. I'm the journeyman on that path. I'm the journey person on that path. It's a constant journey. And as you know, in all journeys, there's ups and downs, pull over, rest, take a break, keep going, flying through. You make great time, you slow down, you hit traffic, empty, right? Paved roads, bumpy roads, potholes, gravel. Everything is part of the journey. Everything's part. And this journey is no different as well. So we're going to go on a journey for 10 nights together in making sure that this salat now penetrates the physical perishing world and ends up attaching itself to the soul. Right? Everything will perish. Surah Rahman says, what will remain is the wajh of Allah. I want my salat to reach the wajh of Allah. He's baqi, my salat becomes baqi. And then I have a defender, a witness with me in every step of the hereafter, inshallah. And that's why you see that, to me, one of the most devastating moments in Karbala, small things here and there. Imam Husain Ashur now is getting ready to go towards the Maidan of Karbala. Besides him and Imam Sajjad, no other men are left. And he begins to give Zainab some advice. And the one advice that I found to be surprising, always growing up hearing this masayib, is that Zainab, in your Salatul Layl, don't forget me. It's devastating. Don't forget me. And while the Maqatil books and the books of Maqtal don't, maybe I haven't seen, maybe it's there, they don't really describe it to a T, my heart tells me that someone like Zainab, alayha salam, would not miss that Salatul Layl. So now I picture her on Shami Ghariba. Imagine that night for a moment. The Shuhada now are headless, their bodies have been trampled, they're spread out in the Maidan of Karbala, the tents are on fire, kids are everywhere. There has to come a moment where there's complete darkness and complete silence. The kids have finally fell asleep, the enemy now has left. The carnage from what occurred after Hussein is still fresh, of course. There's smoke in the air from the fire, there's ashes everywhere, there's no doubt there's small children that didn't survive Shami Ghariba. And all I can picture is Bibi Zainab somewhere now finding one small little crevice in the corner to stand towards Qibla and say, Allah Akbar. In that carnage, in that chaos, in that grief, in that gham, she kept her brother's promise alive. She would not miss one Salatul Layl. That's that Salat, no matter what's happening on the outside, it really penetrates inside the soul. I don't know where, I just picture her now doing sujood now, everything around her. I don't know how she did it. She was that Zainab who saw things that even Husain didn't see. They say in the Maqtal that during Janab Qasim's Masa'ib, and sometimes we don't mention this all the time, during Janab Qasim's Masa'ib, Imam Hussein, when Qasim says, Ya Chacha Adrikni, oh help me, Imam Hussein goes roaring into the Maidan of Karbala, and he came at the enemy with such fierce speed that the enemy thought that he was going to attack him. The enemy was about to behead Janab Qasim. He had his sword up, about to what? About to separate the head from the body. Imam Hussein couldn't for a moment even fathom the idea of Hassan now being beheaded, so he attacked the enemy. Hussein never saw anybody beheaded. Imam Hussein trampled, but my heart, Masaib to Bibi Zainab, my salams to the heart of Bibi Zainab. Not only did she watch her brother's body be trampled 10 times, she watched every single shaheed of Karbala be taken by Umar bin Saad's army and beheaded and be put on spears. In that gham, in that grief, in the heaviest of hearts now, somewhere in the corner in the middle of the night, Zainab is saying, Subhana Rabbi Ra'ala wa bihamdi. سيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to accept this qaleel ibad, inshallah. We ask you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to give us that tawfiq, inshallah, to understand true dimensions of salat and to make us the true musallin, inshallah, of Allah. We ask you, Allah, to weaken the hands of the enemies of humanity, to strengthen the mustaza'afin and the oppressed all the world. In one dua we have, Allah, please, on this night of Shabi Jum'ah, with our marhumin now at our door, we ask you, Allah, to elevate the stats of the marhumin and to make all of us stand beside the Imam when he comes. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Requested to recite a Surah Fatiha for these marhumin: Akhtar Alam, Syed Rehan Hussain Naqvi, Sakina Khatun, Syed Ali Hussain Shah, Sughra Shirin, Mirza Baqir Raza Ibn Mirza Fayyaz Ali Khan. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladhina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim waladdallin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And also, as we have been requesting all of you for so many days, we are providing you these continuous majalis from the beginning of the Muharram, and they are going to continue till the end of this Ayyam-e-Azam. And we need the support of the Mu'mineen. We ask you to send us your donations, you can, and the donations can be sent either at you can email transfer them to treasurer@cig.ca, or you can also go to our website and use the link to donate as well. Now I would request Alian and Alishan to recite the Naha for us.
Ya Husain, Ya Husain, Ya Husain,
ग़ुरबत में क़त्ल हो गया मज़लूम बेवतन, मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन, मैं भाई भाई कहता लाशा बहन बहन, मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन, ग़ुरबत में क़त्ल हो गया मज़लूम बेवतन, मैं भाई भाई कहती थी लाशा बहन बहन, आई नास दो घड़ी परदेस की फिजा کنبا شہید ہو گیا میں اگر اجڑ گیا پردیس دیس غیر کا اپنا وطن وطن میں بھائی بھائی کہہ بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن ایک دل کے داغ میں نے 72 اٹھا لیے کچھ داغ میں نے قلب کے اندر چھپا لیے چھپتے نہیں چھپانے سے داغ حسن حسن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن دیکھا ہے بابا میں نے جو منظر بتاؤں کیا نیزوں پہ تھا رکھا ہوا سید کا گھوڑوں کے دوڑنے سے ٹکڑے بدن بدن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن قاسم کی لاش لائے تھے دامن میں شاہدی سہرے سے بے نیاز تھی نوشاہ کی جبیں ایک شب بھی نہ پائی نہ جس کی دلہن دلہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن ابا حسن سے تابا حسین شہید تک بابا یزید تک لوٹا ہے اہل شام نے میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی بہن بہن میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن
زیادہ حسین السلام علیکم یا ابا عبداللہ السلام علیکم ابن رسول اللہ السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا وارث آدم صفوت اللہ السلام علیکم یا وارث نوح نبی اللہ السلام علیکم یا وارث ابراہیم خلیل اللہ السلام علیکم یا وارث موسیٰ کلیم اللہ السلام علیکم یا وارث عیسی روح اللہ السلام علیکم یا وارث محمد حبیب اللہ السلام علیکم یا وارث امیر المومنین ولی اللہ السلام علیکم یا محمد ابن المصطفیٰ السلام علیکم یا ابن علی علی المرتضی السلام علیکم ابن فاطمة الزہراء السلام علیکم ابن خدیجة الکبریٰ السلام علیکم یا صار اللہ وابن سارہ والوتر المعتور اشہد انک قد قمت الصلاة وآتیت الزکاة وامرت بالمعروف ونہیت عن المنکر وأطعت اللہ ورسولہ حتی أتاک الیقین ولعن اللہ امة قتلتک ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مده الهمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من دائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك إمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الحادي المهدي، وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا، وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وعمري لعمركم، متبع صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. زيارة علي أكبر عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن حسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. زيارة الشهداء كربلاء عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا أولياء الله وأحباه، السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وعبداه، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الزكي الناصح الأمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وتعبت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. زيارة حضرت عباس عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك أيها العبد الصالح المطيع لله ولرسوله، أشهد أنك قد جاهدت ونصحت وصبرت حتى أتاك اليقين. لعن الله الظالمين لكم من الأولين والآخرين وألحقهم بدركه الجحيم. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك شمس الشموس أنيس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض التوس، الراضي بالقدر والقضاء جميع الفداء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان، أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك جميعا فداء ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum. The Mahdi Youth Society is in need of your help through donations. Please check out CIG.ca and click on Donate Now. Upon clicking Donate Now, scroll down and click on CanadaHelps.org. Through this, you can address your funding to the Mahdi Youth Society by referring to AMYS. Enter your donation amount and click Submit so that your donations can go a long way in helping us continue to broadcast our programs for Muharram and for future events. Thank you for your time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.